Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us again. So we will have an invited talk now, and it's part of a plan, of at least a session which is on the early warning system, and we have an example of an early warning system here in Europe, and it's a presenter that is even working in Vienna, even though she's coming from Spain. And so I will not keep it long, so I just want to give the floor to our speaker, which will now introduce the Aristotle project, which is Ms. Maria del Puy Papi Saba. So without further ado, please, you have the floor.
Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me and having me here. I think it's a good chance to introduce this beautiful project. I would like to stress the fact that I'm presenting here today. I'm the face of Aristotle today, but this is a huge project in which I think about 150 people are involved, scientists and non-scientists. So please, I would like to give credit to the whole consortium because this is not one person job. So I think we can start. So yeah, I will explain and kind of tell you a little bit the experience of GeoSphere Austria in the multidisciplinary partnership Aristotle-eENHSP. Sorry, I have to press next. So first of all, I would like to tell you what is Aristotle. Well, Aristotle is basically a project that started in 2016. And within the first 2 years, so there are 3 contractual years. The first contractual year comprised 2 years. During the first couple of months, so a little bit longer than half a year, we will design in the type of products that we wanted to deliver to our end user. And in February 2017, we already started being operational within the pilot phase. Then in 2018, we got a second phase of the project, and now it evolved also the name, and we are known as Aristotle-eENHSP, so the European Natural Hazard Scientific Partnership. This project, so this period lasted also 2 years, and in here we also enlarged the partnership and enhanced the services that we provide. And in 2020, so we are the third contractual period, we also got new partners and more hazards involved in our scientific consortium. So basically what we do, we give scientific advice to the ERCC 24/7 and multi-hazard and global. So why do we exist? There is well known that when a natural catastrophe happens or is about to happen, there is a huge need of information the first time or at the moment of the stroke or strike of the hazard. Either if it's a forecastable hazard or an unforecastable, there is always a huge need of information. And the available information sometimes is very little or sometimes is too much to be digested. So our main goal is to take this information about natural hazards that is available from internet, models, services internally in our partnerships, open source services. Take this information and make a scientific assessment, so digest this information, transform it into a report or to a presentation, and give the advice, our scientific advice, about this specific hazard or this specific multi-hazard situation to the ERCC. Also, when you have an event, let's take an earthquake, the first minutes of the natural hazard, you might have a first estimate of the potential damages. You might have a first models coming out. And after the time passes, and the more time it passes, you have fine-tuned models, either shake maps with better source mechanism characterizations, or if you go to the weather, better better defined, either because of the time or the space resolution is for local models. You have more information the closer you are to the event. So also we provide updated information every single time, every single moment, so when there is needed, based on the additional information or additional updates that we have. So again, Aristotle is basically a project or a consortium that provides scientific information about natural catastrophes 24/7 in a multi-hazard manner. And we are nowadays, after 6.5 years of project, we are 24 partners. 21 of them are national and 3 international organizations. And we cover 15 countries in Europe. So you see the map here, so the green, dark green colors are the countries that are covered by the Aristotle Consortium. And something very important is that most of the institutions have the national mandate. So most of them are in line with the national advice as well. And who we are. As I mentioned before, we have different natural hazards. In total, we are now covering 6 different hazards. We have earthquakes, tsunamis, volcano, forest fires, flooding, and severe weather. From the GeoSphere Austria perspective, we are covering earthquake and severe weather. So if you see this chart, you see that in the earthquake group, you have like different institutions. You have INGV, COERI, NIEP, NOAA, GeoSphere Austria, EMST, EU Center, and GEM. So some of these partners, as for other hazard groups, are operational. And some of them are operational and provide services to the group, to the hazard group. So in this case, EMST, EU Center, and GEM are not operational partners, but they do provide information, scientific information with risk analysis, different model data about databases of exposure, vulnerability to the hazard group. As well as the severe weather, we have UK Met Office, Meteofans, FMI, IPMA, KNMI, and GeoSphere Austria. And all of these partners are exactly the same. They are operational. Some of them provide the services or the products that they can be used to afterwards do the assessment. And so every single group, hazard group, works in a rotational basis. So every week, each institution will rotate, and the next institution in line will actually do the assessment to the ERCC. And how we operate. So we are really a lot of people, so we cannot talk all the time all together at once. So what basically we have are what I mentioned before, the hazard groups. So we have 6 different hazard groups in which a pool of experts back up the hazard leader. The hazard leader is the main person who is on duty, a person or institution usually is one person, who is on duty that specific week. So should an event happen during that week, all the hazard leaders, so one person from each of the hazard groups, will meet in what is called the MHOB, which is the Multi-Hazard Operational Board. This is basically a 24/7 online telematic room where the hazard leaders can meet and discuss potential natural hazard situations that might happen or have happened already or are already happening. And so the main goal of this expert and the main or key point of this project is that we are convening. So we are people talking to people, and we are not only focusing in our own hazard. We do share the information. We combine all the different hazards in one single report or in one single deliverable to provide this information, this scientific advice to the ERCC or the Situational Awareness Center. And now you might think, yeah, but you have different type of hazards. You have different type of time scales. You have forecastable hazard and you have no forecastable hazards. So for that, we have different type of operational modes. So for instance, severe weather, flooding, and forecast are forecastable, and forest fire, are forecastable hazards. Depending on which situation that you have, you might even foresee that something potentially could happen 15 days in advance, like for a tropical cyclone. That you can already have an idea that something might develop. On the contrary, you have earthquake and tsunamis, which are not forecastable, and then you have volcano, which are sort of a hybrid mode, depending on which volcano we are talking about. Our colleagues might have more or less information, and they might expect something to happen with higher or lower probability. So for covering all this time range, we have different types of operational modes. The first one I would like to introduce, and it was the first one that we actually introduced in the consortium, is the emergency response mode. This is basically a report that we deliver 3 hours after we are activated. So the ERCC says, I need information about this specific event. please provide me with a report within the next 3 hours with every available information and key information that you think we could use for taking further actions. Then, secondly, we have the routine operational mode. This is also a scientific assessment that we provide 3 times a week, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And this is supplementary to the emergency response mode. So we are also giving scientific advice, but of course, first of all, it might not contain as much information and a full report. And also, it will be included all the events that are potentially coming in the next couple of days, or that have already happened and updates are needed. And then this is the last service that we have incorporated in our portfolio, which is the Scientific Technical Assistant Facility. And again, we give scientific advice. It's everything about giving scientific advice from the scientist point of view to the ERCC, so civil protections, and also the member states now, they can receive this information. Within the staff mechanism, we have 2 different layers. The first one is the fast track, and this is basically a remote or face-to-face, depending on the hazard group, service in which we provide daily or even hourly information on a specific event. I will explain you some examples so that it's easier to know exactly what we mean, because right now it seems like all of them, we are doing the same. We are giving scientific advice, but you will see that timeline is actually key for the 3 different operational modes. And then the second layer is the medium-term service, which is basically scenario preparation. So mitigation and potential scenarios about earthquakes or severe heat waves, for instance, and so on and so forth. I will not go too much into detail of how we operate, but I would like to give you an idea of why we are right now so important to the ERCC, so to say. And it's basically because they have direct contact to us. So when something is happening or is approaching or has already happened, the ERCC can basically call us, and actually they call GeoSphere Austria, and say, please, I need information on this natural hazard. Can you please provide me with a report within the next 3 hours? So then the point of contact, which is based in GeoSphere Austria, will contact the hazard leaders. So 1 person per institution, per hazard for the institution on duty that week. And these people, so the Multi-Hazard Operational Board, will meet telematically and will convene and decide whether the situation is severe enough, whether they should provide a report, or whether they can also provide it in a monitoring report on a later state. After this multi-hazard operational board has convened, so all the hazard leaders has convened, everyone for each of the hazard group, the event leader, which is the person on charge of the main hazard of the activation, will contact the ERCC to give a first estimate of the situation, to give a first view of how they see the situation after 30 minutes of the activation. If there is something important to say, they will communicate it already here in this call, 30 minutes after the activation. Within the next 1 hour and a half after the call, they will proceed with creating the report, compiling the information, all multi-hazard, and after 3 hours from the activation, they will deliver a report to the ERCC. And they will give them a call, either because they might have questions or they might need clarification about any of the content in the report. So the key point about this slide is that we are people talking to people, not just internally within the hazard group, but also with the end user, so with civil protection or with ERCC and the Situation and Awareness Center. This is an example of an emergency report, and this is the intense tropical cyclone in between Madagascar and Mozambique. I think this report is from 21st of February. So sometime in February, the event lasted longer than 3 weeks. So we were reporting this event for longer than 3 weeks, either with these reports or monitoring reports. So what you find in the report, there's a lot of information. This is the first page. The first page that the ERCC sees is an executive summary. So this page has the basic and key information to the event. And basically you have date and time, initiation of the natural hazard of the event, maybe end time, and then also cascading effect. Maybe you have also additional hazards. In this case, for instance, we had also flooding events because the reservoirs were already full, and all the torrential rains that fall in Mozambique, they were actually flooding the region. Some localized floods were happening. And of course, we have to give the scientific advice within the next 3 hours of the activation, and potentially, for the forecastable, the evolution of the event. If you go into the detail into the report, you have more detailed information, like you have population map, also with tables, with the inhabitants per city affected by, in this case, the polygon, so it's the impacted area. You can also get information about, construction, so maybe power plants, dam, nuclear power plants, airports, which is also key when you are trying to send goods or even people to the affected area. You need to have this information. So all of these, they are databases that we use to also assess for potential damages in the area for specific buildings or things. Then you will have the severe weather hazard assessment, so basically the weather forecast, not just for that specific day, but also the situation to come, and potential uncertainties. So in this case, you have this cone of uncertainty where the tropical cyclone might be heading to. As I mentioned before, this case was very severe because it stayed, so the tropical cyclone crossed Madagascar, and it stayed in the channel along, I think, about 3 weeks, going back and forth one between Madagascar and Mozambique. Also, because you have a lot of rain and the reservoir were already full, you will have the flooding information. So they have the different models. This is for Madagascar and also for Mozambique. So you will have also the potential impact when floodings are coming due to the additional rainfall of the event. Of course, you will have the hazard, earthquake hazard. In this case, there was no earthquake, but we always provide the historical earthquake information just to let the RCC know what the potential earthquake could happen in the region. And then, should there's something to report, volcanic and tsunami information. We have also another type of service, another type of product, sorry, within the emergency response mode. Maybe the situation is not as severe, and maybe not all the hazard will contribute to the report. So then we created something that is called light report, which is shorter and lighter, which maximum includes 2 hazards per report. In this case, this is an example of a volcanic activity in Mexico. And you can see all the information, or you can find all information about the volcano activity within the report. Also, they can put some models, like pyroclastic models or observations, to give more information and detailed information, but just about this hazard. Usually, these kind of reports, they also include the weather information because it's relevant for every single hazard. And on the other hand, you have also a light report example for the forest fire. This were the forest fire in southern Chile this year, also in February. And here you find the models that they use, information regarding the forecast, the expected rain, and so on and so forth. Then we have the routine operational mode. It's also a report. We provide this, as I mentioned before, Mondays, Wednesday, and Friday. And basically, you find events that are going to happen, that are happening already, or that will happen. And the first page, you see the headlines, which is basically events, so important events that are enclosed in the whole report. So if you have events in green or yellow, and this is a color code that we basically calibrated, sorry, ourselves, you will find the event in the headlines. Then inside of the report, you have a discussion, so impact, potential impact, forecast, if it's a forecastable hazard, or in the case of earthquakes, it will be, for instance, the aftershock sequences could be an option. At the end of the report, we have something which is called the long-lived events. And those are events that are longer in time, so like volcanoes or forest fire situations, events that are lasting longer than 1 month. And maybe they are not always important to report. they are important to report, but they are not as important as other events to be added in the headlines. So they are always included in the report, and only when the situation notably changes or worsens, they will move into the headline section, and they will actually report the changes of the situation with respect to the previous days. And then we have the staff, so the Scientific Technical Assistance Facility. And this is, as I mentioned before, scientific information that we give daily on a regular basis. We started last year with volcano and flooded as the pilot phase, and this year they became operational, and now we also integrated forest fire and severe weather. And then for the second layer, so the medium term, we have more scenario-based situations. And as an example, we did a heat wave in the European Union last year as a white paper, and a transponder infrastructure failure induced by extreme weather that actually was also a good contribution from the GeoSphere Austria. And now in progress, we have also a scenario about earthquake and a trigger tsunami in the Mediterranean region. So this is more for preparedness and risk reduction. And now I will go to real life. I will present you an example, probably you well known, the two earthquake sequences that happened in Turkey in February this year. It was on the 6th of February. The first earthquake happened, I think it was about 2 in the morning, UTC, so early at night, a 7.8 magnitude stroke Turkey. And then the very next morning, I think it was at 10 UTC, a 7.5 magnitude stroke, a little bit to the northeast of the first epicenter region. So of course, we were activated. It was a very serious situation and a humanitarian crisis. So for the two events, we prepared, so the earthquake group prepared 2 different reports with information of the impact, the weather forecast as well, because it's always important for all the hazards. And in here, we also have the shake maps. So we have the people affected by a certain level of intensity. This gives you an idea already of the damage in the epicentral region. Of course, these are models. So the longer time we spend in the report, the better models and the more information we will have, and better assessment we will be able, more accurate assessment we will be able to give. This is, for instance, I think a 6th version of the shake map from USGS. This is what we use for our assessment. And in here, the first estimate was a point source. But within, I think it was 48 hours, they had already a version with a line source instead of a point source. So we also have these updates running every day if the RCC asks for them. Another important thing are the historical earthquakes. So you can also relate, usually people kind of remembers or can picture the situation when they remember or they relate a past event, either in this case is earthquakes, and they can relate probably the potential damages that could happen in these two events if they know what happened 10 years ago. That's why for us it's really important. We not only provided with the emergency response reports, but also with 4 monitoring reports during the very same week when the second earthquake happened, but also the week after, providing with information mainly on aftershock sequences, which are also very important. Because damages are already there in the buildings, and maybe you don't need a 7-point earthquake or a 7.5 earthquake to even make the building collapse. So even 5.5 will be enough to produce more damages because the vulnerability changes within time, because they have already happened some events before. And also, as I mentioned before, the weather information is very important, because once the earthquake happens, you have to allocate hundreds of thousands people, homeless people, that they don't have nothing. They don't have even clothes because they have to flee their homes. So in this case, the weather information was given through the staff mechanism every single day, intensively. So the weather, actually the earthquake didn't catch much attention after 1 week, but the weather actually was the most important hazard. So as you see, the importance of being multi-hazard and the whole, all the services that we have can cover a single event that has a cascading effect with maybe some cold weather and so on, which is actually not that extreme in the region. It's a mountainous region, but when something strokes before, it can really become a very severe situation. Here I just present you the reports that we compiled since the beginning of these contractual years, over the 1st of October of 2020 until the 10th of February 2023. So in total, we provided the ERCC 42 multi-hazard reports, 34 light reports, and 373 routine operational reports, or monitoring reports. The different colors show the different type of hazard that we reported. And here you can see actually the amount of reports. If you look to the right side table, the number of reports that we produce for each of the different hazards. So for earthquake, for instance, you have 19 reports. And if you compare it to the previous two, contractual periods from before, you can see a drop in the number of these type of reports, as well as it happens to the severe weather. So right now, the period is a little bit shorter now, but it still is about 3 years. And severe weather also produced like 30 reports within the last contractual periods and 37 in the previous two contractual periods. And this is because we included the monitoring report. This was a change, because before we were getting a lot of activations, because of course, not everyone is an expert in every hazard. It's impossible to know everything about everything. And introducing these other services allow us to also be more efficient and target more the regions and the type of report that we should deliver. And as a wrap-up, I know that this presentation was about our experience in GeoSphere Austria, and I spent so much time explaining about the project, but it's so big, and it has so many things to explain. But I would like you to give you an overview of what we do at GeoSphere and our commitments towards the consortium and the project. And you will see that we do actually a lot. So we are involved in task 1, which is the management team. Right now, Rocío Baro is the one doing this. So she, together with other colleagues from INGV, they manage the whole service, the whole project, and all the institutions. Then the service provision. We have the earthquake, and we have severe weather. So we have a large amount of people entering the rotational duty weeks and providing with scientific information. We also have a training task, not just internal training to know what to provide, but also trainings to the end user. They have to understand what we can provide, what we can do. Some of these people are not actually scientists. They might come from humanistic, they might come from political science. They might have never known what's the difference between intensity and magnitude in an earthquake. So you have to deal, and you have to kind of show them how to interpret the report in that sense. So we need to train them as well. So we need training, but they also need. We have tasks 5 and 6, which is basically in the enlargement and enhancement of the partnership and the service. So we are looking always for more partners. One of the goals from the ERCC was covering the whole Europe. So far, we didn't manage, but we are still in good track to do it. And then last but not least, the task 7 is the quality control. And this is a key task in the project. This is the only way we can improve, by getting feedback from the end user, by getting internal feedback, trying to generate either different products or being more efficient. And just also some additional people that are or were very important in the project. So the project coordination at GeoSphere Austria is Gerhard Votava, as he is also a member from the coordination team and the steering committee. And then we have also Denny Arnor as external advisor, who was actually before a member of the service management team. And we have other people who also contribute, like Brigitta, Christian, Paul, and Marcus, that may not be as visible as other people, but they do also a great job. And this is my presentation for today. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Papi Saba. So, in an effort of timekeeping, I will be inviting you to ask your questions directly to the speaker once we move to the main floor, because we have to move on to the next speaker, the next session that is also about youth, and there will be an invited speaker and then a panel. So if you have any questions for the speaker, please ask her when we are out of the panel. So thank you again, and thank you for being here.